Hello and welcome to the third episode of Beyond Art. As always, I am your host, Nicole Darapanalasi. Today I am joined with Julie Sperl, who is a Montreal-based artist, and she focuses a lot on drawing and painting. I've had the pleasure of having a class with Julie this year, and honestly, it's wonderful to see artists that take in consideration their background and blend it into a beautiful art form. Anyways, without further ado, thank you so much for being here, Julie, and you can introduce yourself.
My name's Julie Sperl. My pronouns are she, her, and I have a background in marine science and education, and now I'm pursuing fine arts and trying to bring all of my passions together.
I'm so happy that you're here.
Likewise.
And I think the first question is, what do you consider art and what does it mean for you?
I think when it comes to art, it's someone wanting to deliberately make something to express something, and that can take so many forms. And I find so much beauty in recognizing all of those different forms. Like my grandmother's art was definitely building a home, and that included the food, it included the garden, it included, hosting, like you're doing now.
Yeah.
And I just really like to make things and explore and use making as a tool of discovery and connection.
Yeah. So would you consider I'm thinking of like the popular definition of art being maybe something you look at. So for you, does it still go beyond necessarily like a visual art or like more of a
Yeah. I think the world of art is inclusive of absolutely everybody. Because when people say I'm not artistic, I can definitely find something in them that they do with purpose, that they make and create, and definitely beyond the world of visual arts. That's just where I like to play a lot in the visual arts. But
And do you feel like the definition, since you started going much more into like fine arts and actually like studying it or going to school for it, do you feel like that changed a bit from your perception?
I think when I was in my first drawing class and I was introduced to what a drawing could be, that definitely changed my perspective on what a drawing could be. Like we were shown a video of someone going for a walk, and it's like they're making a line from point A to point B. So that's a drawing. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
is
there's
that
like so many possibilities. And from when I started, I used to hate abstract art. I didn't get it, but now like I'm done my undergrad and I'm like I love abstract art. I'm like it can be anything you want it to be.
And I see a lot of that. My appreciation for abstraction comes now in looking at like patterns and forms and shapes. And I think before there was also an issue of access.
Yeah.
Of like, well, how do I understand this? What is the context of this? And I think that was a big hurdle. I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of people in contemporary art. But one of my professors said, start with the description. And with the description, you can gain access. And I thought that was very, very smart.
One thing I'm really interested is why did you decide to pursue art? And if you can go a bit maybe in your background, if you feel comfortable. I'm just, honestly, it's like a rare to find people that change a bit their career paths. Especially I'm so young, so for me to like get to know people like that, I'm just fascinated.
Oh, thank you. Well, the way I see it, and lots of people have different beliefs on life, but in my opinion, I'm only going to be in this form, this Julie form, for this lifetime. So I want to pursue everything I possibly can, all of my passions. I've always been interested in making art. I remember there's like a picture of me when I'm very small, holding a paintbrush and pretending to paint a door in my home. So I guess I've always had paintbrushes in my hands, and I was always encouraged to follow all of my passions, which I don't know that's very common. So I have my mom to thank for that. But yeah, I was always encouraged to do art and was offered space to do art in my home. And at the end of high school, I had to decide, am I going to pursue art or am I going to pursue science? And so I decided to pursue science and keep up my art because at the time I didn't think that I could learn what I would learn in an undergraduate science degree while doing an arts. I didn't think I could keep up the science that I was interested in the way I could keep up the art that I was interested. So I pursued that for a while, and I had a great time. And then not everything goes smoothly because I had undiagnosed ADHD. I got a lot of burnout, and I didn't understand why that was happening. So I stopped with my graduate studies in marine science, and I decided to go follow another dream, which included traveling and teaching. And I was always interested in teaching. And so that took me abroad to Japan, where I taught for a year and a half. And then after that, I wanted to teach in a different context because I wanted to know, do I just like teaching or do I just like Japan? So I went to the country of Georgia and I taught there for a while. And then I came to Montreal and got my teaching degree.
Wow.
And I taught science. And once you get into a school, you often can teach multiple subjects. So I have taught everything except history and French. And then I got kind of unimpressed with the system. You see a lot of places where you want to help people, but you can't because of the system. And I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. So I decided to pursue this now and try and bring them all together.
So we were just talking a little bit off recording, but I was asking Julie because I find this fascinating why she chose to pursue teaching and what was really like interesting in that. I personally don't really like kids, so or like anything. I think I'm bad at explaining things. So I was just wondering. We just talked about it, but like, what made you want to go into teaching as well?
Well, I've been misunderstood a lot, so I have spent a lot of time explaining things, and I really enjoy helping people understand things. And so I figured in this profession, I can design the way I can design how people get to interact with a new topic. I can make it interesting, I can make it playful, and I can help nurture a passion in people through this. And that was really exciting. And I did get to do that. And I also, like, when you introduce a topic to someone and you want them to connect with it, it's important to get to know the person, to get to know how they view the world, what they find important. And the really fun and exciting challenge about that is building that connection between the subject and between the person's passions. Because in my experience, I've found that everything is interdisciplinary. And you can connect anything to science and anything to art. And to say that they're separate things does not make sense to me.
Also, I wanted to ask you, because you said you taught in Japan and Georgia as well. Do you feel like, depending on the country you were in or like the culture around there, it changes? It obviously changes, but to you, what was like the most jarring? Because was it the same, like you were still teaching in science or?
At the time, I was teaching English.
Okay.
But really, and I taught all ages, both of them. And while I was teaching here in Montreal, I taught mostly high school.
Okay.
Grade 10, Sec 4, Sec 3. I find it very easy to relate to that group, that age group, because they're old enough to get my jokes and old enough to really take an interest in what they're doing. But what I found was that kids are the same no matter where you go. They want to be nurtured, they want to be silly. They're going to have the same problems. It doesn't matter if you're in Japan, Georgia, or working at an international school in Montreal. Kids are the same.
Taking different hobbies and like different passions, do you feel it is a thing that you want to do, bringing everything together in your art pieces or even in your life? How do you manage transfer your knowledge into? It's such a big question. But how do you find not creativity, but the way to build bridges between like two things that are often separated sometimes?
I think it starts with like a spark of interest. If someone says, oh, this and this, how can we relate them? I will come up with 9,000 ideas. But as for my own kind of creative cycles, before art school, I would just kind of cycle through different modes. Like sometimes I would be very much into playing music, and I'm not very good, but
It's okay.
I would play guitar and write a bunch of songs. And then I would go in and make like 30 paintings. And then it might be time for prose, and I might start writing short stories. Like I have a lot of junk on my computer.
Don't worry, me too.
But it's been cyclical. But going in and making fine arts the thing that I'm going to focus on, it's been interesting too, because the program is like studio arts, but I'm doing painting and drawing specifically, and there's so much to explore. So
There is.
I just go and I pick a topic and I experiment. In our class that we've been doing together, I've been doing a lot with big black drawings. And what got me interested in that was in the summer, we had to pick a research topic. And I chose the deep sea. It's like, all right, this is a place that I've always wanted to go. I do not have access as a person who's not, doing their PhD in marine geology. But I want to bring this to the world, because I find people can be intimidated by the sciences, or they can just, I don't know, feel like there's a schism between how they think they should interact with it and what is there. And that breaks my heart. So, and there's already there's so many different things in our capitalist society that benefit from us not connecting to nature. Like, oh, look at it as a product. Look at it as something we can use to make ourselves more prosperous.
Yeah, there's also like a thing of disconnect. Like you feel less bad about something if you're not necessarily understanding it.
Yeah, or caring about it. And so that's my ultimate goal, is to build connections, is to build connections between people and the environment, and just all the joy that's there. And so since I don't have access to my own little personal submarine, I watch videos of it's like EV Nautilus, and they just publish all of their videos of their ROVs, or remotely operated vehicles, that they go down and explore the deep sea. And that's where I get a lot of, or have been getting a lot of my most recent inspiration. And so my idea came from this. Okay, we have the deep sea. It's dark. It's dark. There's no lights down there. The idea of creating a piece that is dark, that you have to explore in the dark, was kind of my inspiration. Like with the ROVs, they come down, they have lights, and they shine the lights on everything, and then we see all of these wild colors and shapes. But the day-to-day of the inhabitants aren't going to see that. They might see some bioluminescence here and there, and that's for a future project.
Ooh.
But overall, they're just in the dark all the time. So I took a marine geological feature that was really cool, that had only been discovered 11 years ago. It's called a tar lily, and it's like a natural gas that's been, or not gas, but natural hydrocarbons that have been pushed up through the ground, and they made this beautiful lily shape. And it's really cool. And you can hear the scientists on the boat, and they're like, oh, it's a ship. It's going to be a ship, like a shipwreck for sure. And then they get down there, and like, we've never seen this before. And we don't, as surface people, and inland here as well, we don't get that thrill of discovery in the same way. So I really wanted to build that experience by making a low contrast drawing that relied on different media to reflect light in different ways. So I used Conte, I used charcoal, I used, what is it called, graphite, I used, what is it called, shiny stuff, varnish. Yes, thank you. And so when people would come in to it, I've had it illuminated fully, but the idea is you're like a little ROV with your phone light or a flashlight, and you get to discover it like one piece at a time. So that joy of discovery is there, and you don't have it all the time. So that's really what I wanted to communicate for that piece. And I made another piece that was kind of like a piece of the wreck of the Titanic, to do a similar thing. But with that, the Titan. It's that huge piece
Yeah.
of history. And also, should we be here? No, not really. So it introduces the human element. And then with my oil rig piece, which it shows a picture. It's what, 3 meters by, no, it's not. It's tall.
Yeah, it's like
And like
floor to
maybe,
ceiling
yeah,
almost.
maybe 3 meters by almost 2 meters. And on the upper quarter or upper third is above water, where it's like a picture of an oil rig on top, an oil platform. And then below, I used the way you have water diffracts light, so that it looks like the posts that it's standing on are closer to you and underwater.
Yeah.
So it's meant to be like you come upon this strange thing in the night and it's dark. And for this one, I used chrome marker as well to make it shinier. But to bring that feeling of, oh, what is this? Is it safe? Should it be here? But it's fascinating and beautiful, to really bring in the now human industry and how we relate to that on the ocean, because that's a whole other big topic that we can't really escape from.
Do you feel like, obviously you have like so many research done into it, or like topics that you want to dive into, do you sometimes feel the art that you're doing, do you feel like it's not enough to show what you wanted to do? Because I know that you focus more on, like, in our class it was a drawing class, but do you feel like sometimes it might lend itself to another art form? Or obviously here we can fantasize about like what we can do, but do you feel like science maybe blends, like, or the top, I'm saying science, but more like the topic that you're researching blends itself better to maybe sculptures or drawings? Obviously, I explained and asked the question really badly, but what I wanted to talk about with Julie is if she ever considered using a specific art form or discipline, let's say ceramics or sculpture, as I mentioned, to create a different atmosphere that lends itself better to her topic. So I'm thinking oftentimes when we want to talk about something bodily, artists tend to use ceramics or textile because they have this type of bodily materiality, if that's the right word. Whereas if they want to talk about something that's a bit more heavy, they might use something like sculpture or something that feels bigger. And different disciplines lend themselves a bit better to different topics. Obviously, it will always depend on the material that the artist uses or the techniques that the artist uses. Here, Julie said that she focuses more on painting and drawing, and you can create so much with just that. But I was just interested in seeing how maybe some materials or practices could lend themselves to a topic such as science.
Haven't really done that much sculpture. I would like to work in 3 dimensions, like to maybe make models of the ROVs so people can actually visualize them. But honestly, I want to do everything.
Yeah.
I want to do absolutely everything. But I'd really love to make an immersive experience that people can walk through, that people can feel temperature shifts.
Oh, yeah. It makes me think a bit of the biodome. Have you gone recently?
Yes. Not recently, because they just got a
Yeah, they like changed it a
renovation.
bit. But I know that if you enter the room where the polar bears are, or not the polar bears, I mean
Penguins?
the penguins. Yeah, the penguins are. Like as soon as you enter, you really feel the shift in temperature. So I feel like that could be, obviously requires a big budget, but like there's so much
Potential?
yeah, potential, but also like the way that you curate things could like really change the perspective of like what you're getting. I'm thinking because I want to go into curating as well.
Oh.
And it's just like super interesting to see big pieces that actually have something like to be told from. And also it made me think especially during your last crit, where we were talking a bit about if you wanted to teach like about that or like more like an experience. I forget what we were talking about during the crit, but it made me think of like those museums when we were younger, or like when we went on school trips that we would go like learn about. I remember when planetarium wasn't there, but it was, I forgot where the planetarium used to be, but we would go and be like so mesmerized, like look at the ceiling and look at all the projections, I assume. So your work made me think of that.
Well, on the topic of education and art, the whole notion of bringing these things together, I want people to be able to go through, experience, or start to make the connections between the joy of discovery, the consequences of human hubris, and then the reality of what we're living in right now. Because it's so easy to be divisive and say, oh, everything oil is bad. And a lot of, like, there is a lot of harm that comes from that industry. But at the same time, we are using things every day that come from that industry. And to dehumanize the people who are a part of it isn't a good community building way. I think we need to find ways to talk to each other beyond what larger political bodies want us to think about each other. So in that way, I'm braiding in politics, I'm braiding in science, I'm braiding in art and experience and hopefully compassion.
Yeah.
As for what's next, I really, really, really want to play on, what is it called? Mylar?
Yeah.
And make things that are transparent.
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet, but I want to make a whole bunch of, when you have canvases, like the small ones, and just put Mylar on them, like drawings of Mylar.
That could be cool.
And then have different sides. Maybe have a light inside, I don't know. But kind of exploring the water column. Because if you think about the water column in the middle of the ocean, what would you imagine is in there?
I don't know. For me, I can't even begin to imagine, just because it's like so big. Like, you know how I'm like so shocked that we're trying to explore space when there's so much to explore, like on Earth. I think maybe it changed, but there's only like 5% of oceans that were researched. So I feel like there's so much that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And I think, like, personally, I don't know much, so I can't even begin to like try to understand it. So I think going about it in like an artistic way, or it's a lot easier to digest. And I feel like it's a good place for like people like me to like educate themselves. So yeah.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build those bridges between the known and the unknown, and the perceived ivory tower. I'm trying to like smash it down and make it accessible for everyone, because it should be. There should not be guardians of knowledge in that respect. The notion that the idea that knowledge is kind of behind the paywall of university, or, you know, I understand that it takes a lot of expertise to talk about the minutiae of certain things, but the ability to connect with an ecosystem, an environment, an idea is not one that is or should be assigned only to certain people. Everybody can celebrate in the wonders of what's in the water column. And I think a lot of people would be like, there's nothing in the water column in the middle of the ocean. But there is something. And so, you know, when you change your scope and start looking very, very small, what are the phytoplankton? What are the zooplankton? And so I would love to draw those larger and kind of hang them like, but, and talk about marine snow. And marine snow is basically like marine dust. It's just dead things that float down. And that's like the basis of a lot of benthic, so that's like ocean floor ecosystems that don't really get a lot of nutrients other ways.
And do you feel like, because right now we're talking about more like the marine part of your work, but you also do other things. I know you've been working on those little bugs, like the spiders. So do you feel like those, I'll call them spiders, but
They are spiders,
okay,
yeah.
perfect. Do you feel like those spiders are equally as important to your body of work, or do you feel like they're more of a side project that you do?
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh no. So I grew up arachnophobic. Yes. And I do not like being afraid of spiders. I, like, rationally, I decided that I would take a similar approach to my ocean creatures and try and look at the biodiversity of different
Okay.
spiders and try and eliminate or build compassion or build understanding for them in that way. Because it's so easy just to go along with the dominant cultural thing and say, oh, a spider, squish. And
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So I started around my grandparents' property, taking pictures of them, looking for them, getting to know them, and there were so many different ones. Like, this is in New Brunswick, just like a 10-hour drive
Yeah.
from here. And I found long spindly ones.
Ooh.
I found ones that changed colors and lived in roses and lilacs. And I found a yellow orb weaver that looks like it's too tropical to live here, but it's indigenous to here. And it was bright, and it had like this black and yellow design on its abdomen, which was about the size of my thumbnail, so very large. And I would just kind of go up to them, say hello, and then, you know, if they moved too much, I would run away and visit them the next day. So in that way, I was trying to break my own prejudices and really explore them through an aesthetic sense, the aesthetic sense of biodiversity. And I've learned a lot. I am now able to take a cup and put it over a spider in my house. They're the yellow sac spiders, so they're not as scary to me. And then I move them to my plants.
Okay.
So if you have take an inside spider outside, it might not live, especially if it's in the winter. So I have my house plants that I water, and they can get water there. So it has helped me in my own relationships
That's
to nature.
good. But yeah, like just you talking about how you research things in itself. Research is a big practice in your own practice. It's funny to say, but a lot of your work is based on facts, actual, like, real life events. I know you were working on the Titanic, and you did a lot of research, specific research for that. And I was wondering, like, where do you find research shows the most in your art practice? I don't know if that makes sense, but how you take what you've learned as a person and what you understood from it and put it in a way that is understandable for other people as well.
Well, it starts with a feeling. I am fascinated by everything. Do you know the song Boom Diada from the Discovery Channel?
Maybe. I'm very bad at titles,
It's
but if
okay.
I hear it, maybe.
I'll show it to you after. But it's basically people singing about their passions, just different little lines.
So I actually listened to the song that Julie was referring to after. And it's honestly a really cute song that just goes on showing little clips of the Discovery Channel and how they love the world that revolves around them. So whether it's things that the people were researching or that they found or they just liked, it was just celebrating their love for the world and their passion. I will also try to link it in the notes or in the description of the episode so you guys can refer back to it and enjoy it as well.
And it makes me cry every time because I'm fascinated by everything. So it'll start with something that fascinates me, like, oh my goodness, discovering new life or a new geological feature on the bottom of the ocean and how beautiful it is. So it starts with that aesthetic experience of discovery. And then I want to know everything about it. So I will go into single-minded modeness and just research, research, research. And I will explore all the different rabbit holes I can about it so that I get a huge full picture. And so with all of that information, I start to try and distill it into an image and bring those little discoveries that I've found and nest them as little Easter eggs, if you will. With the 10,000, something like that, marks project, I used a tally mark to illustrate information about the Titanic. And I started with the proportions. I looked at the area, the search area that they had for the Titanic, and I made my paper, because I presented that one in a corner. One corner represented one axis, and then the other corner, the other axis. And then the height of the paper represented the depth of the water and the sky. So the size of the ship, which was like about 2.5 centimeters, the way I drew it, I used the tally mark because the Titanic had 4 smokestacks. And I made it that size and all of the marks a certain depth because that was the ratio of the Titanic to the depth, so that people looking at it would maybe get a sense of scale. And then the marks that I made further kind of represented the people looking for it. Different types of technology, some that went all the way to the ground and up. There was someone who was using dynamite to try and find it. So for those, I made very big tally marks. I don't know if they were easy to find. And then once people started going down in submersibles, they were a different color. And I noted the amount of people or the amount of lifeboats with a particular color, and they were all at the surface. And I also made tally marks for everyone who did not survive. And with that, I did that with glow-in-the-dark paint, so that when you were discovering it with your phone, as you lit it up, it would they would come back as a memory and not be lost forever to time. And at the bottom, I had 2 little halves, since the tally mark kind of partitioned because the Titanic fell in 2 parts. And so there's I try and bring it in as something that you can discover and learn more about later. So maybe you'll look at that and wonder, oh, why are there all of these white and gold, like silver and gold tally marks in this particular area? Oh, there's a chrome tally mark at the top and it in 2 parts at the bottom. So that's the kind of the discovery that I want to help facilitate.
Do you feel like, because there's so much information, especially if you're working from something that's a real event, do you find like for yourself, you learned about it, you researched it, and it's important to you, but do you feel like sometimes it's hard to show everything you want? Or I don't know how to phrase it.
Yeah,
but
no. I think I
because
follow.
sometimes, like, maybe, let's say, one person can look at the artwork and not necessarily understand the amount of information that could be in it. So how do you find where you want to put your focus on finding the good balance between having the information for yourself, but also if you want to translate that for other people?
I think different people will pick up on different things. With that particular piece, I put a lot of information in there that maybe one could figure out if they started to ask questions about scale. And if they don't, that's okay. If they look at it and see a beautiful mess of abstract marks, that's okay too. So I think in like anything, a person's willingness to engage and level of curiosity will curate their experience of the work. And if they start to pick up that thread of, oh, I found this cool thing, and they pull that thread, then maybe they'll catch more of the things that I put in. I don't know that I have mastered this in any way, shape, or form. because I'm still at the beginning
Yeah.
of building my practice. But I think that's the direction that
Okay.
I'm attempting to go
Yeah.
in.
So do you feel like it's important for you to be next to the work, or
No,
no? Okay.
no. If anyone wants to ask me about it, I will talk ad nauseum. But it's also interesting. I want, I have, because we're in a crit situation
Yeah.
in our classes, I don't always get to be the fly on the wall or
Yeah.
the bystander. But no, I don't think I need to be there. If the environment and the work is there and is strong enough on its own, people will engage with it.
Yeah, definitely.
And depending on where they are, maybe they'll ask questions.
And I was also wondering, because recently you've been showing more of your work, you've been applying to things and having it shown. How does that feel for you as being like doing art as your hobby when you were working in like science and doing something else, whereas now this has kind of become more.
It feels kind of amazing if people want to look at my work. I don't think I'm shy about it, because if I make it, I want to share it.
Yeah.
And people are going to engage in it in different ways. And the way people do engage with it, if I get to be there and watch, I get to learn something. And it's something so different to just sit and make work for yourself and show it to your friends and have it up there and people start dialoguing about it. It's wild.
It is.
And it's a really exciting new chapter that
Do
hopefully.
you feel like the artist you want to become, maybe, do you feel like you'd want to be showing more in like that type of way, like galleries and things? Or do you find, obviously this is just like imagining what it could be, or do you find like maybe your work would be better in like an installation
I think
world?
installation is where I'd like to go, where I'd like to head. But I guess putting things in different contexts will start different conversations.
Yeah.
Like, I think seeing spiders on a gallery wall in a kind of a white box will spark a different conversation and connect with a different crowd than maybe people who will go to something that is already science themed kind of thing.
True.
So I think it's all valuable, but I'm excited about putting my things in unexpected places. And I'm also very interested in ephemeral art. So things, that will just disappear, don't stay, an experience.
Yeah. It makes me think of like art that actually uses, but like sustainable art.
Yeah.
That uses actual like materials that maybe eventually degrade or things like that. Do you find like that could be potentially where you want to go, building the bridges between like maybe science, obviously not necessarily marine science, but other types? I don't know if you have like any thoughts, or like what's your opinion on sustainable art and like where that could potentially lead in the future?
I think that's really, really important, because so many materials that we have at our fingertips have different levels of what's the word? Degradation. Like most recently with my spider paintings, I had 3D printed like spider claws that I spray painted it and affixed to them. Ideally, I would have made these of metal, but that wasn't a facility that was open to me at the moment. So having made all of that with plastic, I'm very conscious of that, and I don't want to build my practice in a way that things. Like, some people want things to last forever, and with paintings, it's minerals and medium, and depending on how you dispose of them, it can be toxic to the environment. But if you're just keeping it on a canvas or something, it's maybe less likely to do environmental harm. But I'm not as interested in making art that lasts forever as I am in making art that lends itself to you have to be here, be now to experience it. Because there is that brings us closer to the connection of being of being aware of your surroundings and your environment and building with relationships with those now. And I think a lot of that came from a lot of that joy in ephemerality came from when I was living abroad in Japan and seeing like the cherry blossom festivals.
Yeah.
Like it's celebrated, it's happening only for a short time, and it's that, you know, that celebration of the now, the here, the nature, and the beauty that, you know, you have to be tuned in now to appreciate it. So I think you helped me articulate
Yeah.
something new about my
Yay.
practice. Thank you.
Yay!
But yeah, that's really helpful. Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad. That's why I love having conversations. I think one question I would love, because you've had so many experiences in your life, like from different countries or different topics, I would say. But do you feel like being in university for this undergrad or like has helped you achieve like things you wouldn't normally had? Because I know for me, I feel like art, you can also practice it on your own without having to go to school for it. So I love hearing about people's opinions on what it means to like study art.
Well, one of the main reasons I came to school was because I felt like I had reached a limit in what I could do on my own, which was very much limited. Like I was able to reproduce what I would see in a photo or something. So I came to break that and be inspired and make community.
Yeah.
And in class, everybody comes from such a different perspective and place, and the art is all so different that I pick something up. I learn something from everyone. And my most recent piece, which was I made a round piece that was kind of like a white conte on black, depicting a diver that was leaving a diving bell. And I did it in white on black because the light would shine, and that would be artificial light. So one of the things that I saw you do at the beginning of the class when we were all sharing our previous works is how you projected your work on your own work. And I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And so I really wanted to take that diver and take apart the colors on that was on the original image, separate them, and then project them down so that it would be like you would start to see the colors. And I haven't done it yet because I haven't
There's
had
so
time.
much, yeah. There's so much to do.
But I see so much brilliance from so many different places. And I want to explore it all. And I think I might need a few more lifetimes to do that.
Definitely.
The community building, oh my goodness, my art theory class really helped me gain access to the contemporary art world.
Yeah.
And, you know, why someone has a picture of a blue dot on the wall, what it means, and why it's important. Because I find that stuff difficult to access without a university setting.
Definitely. And I feel like the more you embrace that, the more you go to like places and acknowledge art, I feel like the more it shows a bit in your practice as well. And I know one of the things you do is you go to a lot of the vernissage and gallery openings and things like that. And I was wondering, do you feel like that helps you a lot seeing what other people do and like how you find inspiration, not necessarily from art you see online or things, but actually like physically seeing what's possible?
Yes, absolutely. Number one, it's good to go to vernissages to support your friends because that's how you build a scene. Is you make your stuff, you put it out there, you invite your friends, and you go again, and it's fun.
It is.
It's so much fun, and especially to see how people put different pieces of artwork together. That's really interesting. Because that's not something that I can imagine the context on my own. It's so many people's visions being brought together. And yeah, seeing materiality presented in
Mm-hmm.
different ways, seeing how it's presented, how a piece is presented will inspire me. And before I didn't think about,
Mm-hmm.
putting a piece in a corner
Yeah.
or putting a piece to put on the floor or the ceiling, and seeing different media people are
Mm-hmm.
working in too, that's
Yeah.
inspiring. And getting up and seeing those little brush strokes, yes, it feeds me.
Yeah, definitely. Like this year, I also took a textile class. So like the fibers in the fibers department, and I feel like just seeing how people treat fibers is so interesting. I mostly just draw, but like seeing how that could lend itself like and building one discipline into the other is really interesting. And I feel like a lot of the times some disciplines are valued more than the other. Like I know I've had like the conversation with a couple in couple of my classes, but how sometimes painting is more valued than let's say fibers, because there is this bridge between craft and art. So I was wondering if you maybe chose to go into painting and drawing like you mentioned earlier because at the time that was what you were thinking could work the best, or that's what a traditional view of art was like. I'm thinking how often in institutions or museums and things like that, there is this regard of painting as a bit higher than the other disciplines, as it is more collected or just more widely seen. And I was just wondering if to you that did an impact on your decision on working with painting and drawing.
I see, like a hierarchy of
Yeah.
materials. I do not believe in a hierarchy of materials. I think that there's a historical precedent for
Yeah.
that because, kings and monarchs and religious higher ups would be able to afford to have their portraiture done,
Yeah.
and it was done in paint. But I think you can be, I think, and I want to be creative with everything that I have at my disposal. So I was drawn to drawing and painting because of the materiality of it. And the reason I didn't go into studio arts is because I wanted to build my practice in painting and drawing and focus on that. Because as much as I do want to do everything, I want to focus on like
Yeah.
one particular set of skills at a time. And I've taken painting and drawing each year kind of hand in hand. And next year will be the first year I don't have any drawing classes.
Oh my gosh.
So I'll have to do that on my own, which is fine. But I'm taking materials and methods and a
Okay.
color theory. So
Ooh.
that's going to be exciting. And I'll apply all of that to my drawing anyway. But yeah, again, and there seems to be this divide between painting and drawing that it was surprising to me when I got to school.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in separating the two. I've got both in both. And I think as my discipline progresses and my access to materials widens, I will put everything together that I can.
Have you ever tried using like materials from the earth? It's weird to say, but like not necessarily like acrylics or like processed materials, using cabbage like ink or things like that.
I have. I've taken cabbage. I've tried to do a lot with cabbage. I tried to make a cocktail with cabbage juice. It did not work. But I wanted to make a color changing cocktail that was accessible for everyone and didn't taste like sulfur, but that was a failure. But I did use it as an ink and playfully, because it starts out with if it's like purple or more blue, it's a pH reaction.
Yeah.
So if you add lemon, it will change color. So there's science in there too. But I would like to make my own plant-based pigments. That would be fun. I follow someone on the socials who does that with, I think it's mordant or something. You add it, and they won't be light fast, or maybe they
Yeah.
won't be light fast. Maybe they won't last forever, but it's fun to just play in the now.
Yeah.
Something that I have done as well is when I'm in the forest and I have some time, I'll just take stuff that's different values and make like a little portrait or something just by putting different bits of moss and grass here and there. So that's been fun. And maybe someone will come along and see it and walk through it, or it's there for the moment. It's there for me, or the squirrels or something.
Yeah.
But that's really fun too. I hang on to a lot of stuff that maybe I should recycle because it could be good art supplies as well.
Yeah, I think that all lends itself a bit to what we were saying, like sustainable art. And I feel like Concordia kind of also helps like push that agenda a little bit. And I find there's a lot of things that are not necessarily the greatest with Concordia, but we're not gonna dive into that. But I feel like it's very interesting in seeing like the faculty, not the faculty, but like what is available for students to use. I think with your like background in science, do you find like an interest in wanting we already like spoke about it a little bit, but do you find yourself having like an interest in giving back to not to science but like to the environment, or I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think what I'm trying to do, well, the whole basis of it is environmentally based in that I want people to care.
yeah.
I want there to be a greater integration with our own ecosystems because we are so removed as people living in the West under capitalism. Like, how many people know how to go gather their own food, for example? Foraging is really fun. If you find a great foraging teacher, and you can build that connection for yourself. But that's the goal, to bring people closer to their environment, and to and when you're in nature, right, most of the time, as long as you're both there willingly, as long as you're there, willingly, you can find so much peace, and not the antiseptic kind of closed off way that we've been kind of forced into as people who need to be productive all the time and work for to make sure there's products and for consumption, and which produces waste and all of that. So the act of just making people interested in their environments, and then spending time in their environments, and then caring about their environments, and then integrating with them is one of my ultimate goals. And in doing so, build community, because that's something that's really not where it's difficult to find community when everybody's exhausted.
Yeah, and I feel like more and more we're becoming like individualistic like people. Even now, I mean, I'm on my phone not all the time, but like very often, and that's normal because I grew up with having like electronic devices. And I feel like for some people that might be where they link with, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Whatever, but
link with other people.
link with other people, especially that you can get to chat with people from overseas and like everything. That it just made me think of like how community building now has become something, maybe a skill to improve on.
Yes. Because and the phone, the electronics, I'm not a Luddite. I don't hate technology. Because it can be a very useful tool, and I use that too for community building and keeping in touch with people, and like we are right now with the podcast. That's fantastic. But when people use technology to isolate and end up feeling isolated because of it, that's where we have to kind of break the walls and say, hey, I care about you. And be able to support each other in
Mm-hmm.
that way.
I think one question I was really interested in is the art you're doing is very closely related to what you previously did, and that also interests you now. Do you feel like that would have, if you didn't go into the science and chose instead of to go
Mm-hmm.
into arts from the
Mm-hmm.
get-go, you feel like obviously it would have been much different, but do you still feel like you would have maybe pursued that like passion in science in other ways, or
I think so. I don't think my understanding would have been as rigorous.
mm,
I also think that when I was younger, maybe like all of the difficulties that I did have being undiagnosed with ADHD, I have no idea how that would have turned out in the art world.
yeah.
In the science world, it made things difficult, but I got through to a certain point. And I think I was a little worried about falling too much into myself, which is an odd thing to say, maybe. But I was worried that I would get too much into my own world,
Mm,
and now, and I don't know what that art would have looked like. I still do make intuitive art, and I'm going to go back and expand on that further now that I don't have assignments right
yeah.
now. But I don't know that I was at a mentally healthy place
Mm.
as I am right now. So who knows?
Yeah, obviously it's
But
just like wishful thinking or like in retrospective.
I think all the art I make is for
Mm-hmm.
myself, which makes it harder to give out or like
Yeah, yeah.
to imagine it going into other hands. But anyone who is interested, please do get in touch. But I think if I'm not making it for myself first, I'm not interested.
Mm,
So whatever I'm doing, it's going to be for myself
mm-hmm.
in some way.
Yeah.
And as far as like picking up projects, there have been projects that I've picked up, started, and dropped. But I really enjoy I painting and
Mm-hmm.
drawing. And so, there was a time where I had just finished teaching school and I had like a month or two
Mm-hmm.
off before I started my contract. And I was like, I'm just going to paint. I'm going to pretend I'm a painter. And I made like 30 paintings. I don't know if they're any good. I don't know that they measure up to my standards today,
Mm,
but it's just fun. I
yeah.
think I think the process is just really, really fun. And I don't know when it's finished. I think like when I'm making something, the thing and I are in
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And I'm sure you can relate to
Yeah.
that. And so I just really enjoy that
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Do you feel like for you, maybe going back to the first question, like what
Mm-hmm.
does it mean for you? Is it maybe more of like a play? Like art is more like a form of
Ooh.
play, or
Art is a form of play, a form of discovery. It's soothing. I think I read somewhere that, in fact, check me on this, but when you're looking at your piece and looking at something in the distance, that eye movement of focusing in front of you and focusing away has a really calming effect on the brain.
mm,
I didn't know that, but maybe that's another reason I like
mm,
that. So it's also feels like something I have to do.
okay.
It's a drive. It's like I'm sure you understand. I'm
Yeah,
sure you
yeah,
relate.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like and like I'll go through the cycles
Mm-hmm.
of I have to do something,
Mm-hmm.
but I just really enjoy making shapes and putting color and
Mm-hmm.
mixing color and that conversation. So what art is, it's all of it. It's everything. It's even in the relationships
Yeah.
that I form, I think.
Do you feel like now I'm thinking about it, and one of the question I had was like, is it also in itself a form of documentation? And then I was thinking a bit like
Ooh.
when you were talking about your or 10,000 marks project, to me, what it felt like, it's a lot of a way to understand also, but
Yes.
also a way to like put down what you've learned through
Yes,
it. So I
absolutely.
see it a lot as like the, especially for you, like the art that I see you create is a lot of an amalgamation of like your understanding.
Oh, absolutely. And I really love that. There's a book that I found, I think it's called Drawing Investigations or Investigative Drawing, where different people would talk about, being on the forefronts of different expeditions or whatever, and using drawing to both document and explore. Because when I'm drawing something, oh my goodness, when I'm doing portraits, you haven't even seen any of my people, any of my figurative art. But I feel like when I'm doing portraiture, it's so intimate. I'm getting to know that person, and so in that way, it's really a discovery. And with anything, you're drawing something, you're focusing on it, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was there before. And so, yes, absolutely what you said, an amalgamation of my discoveries, of my understandings, and of my aesthetic experience as well. And I think that's a big difference between, just the illustrative, like if you're just making a copy of something, and maybe more contemporary art experience is even with illustration though, it passes through a human, and that human has experienced an aesthetic relationship with whatever it is. So it's all of those things.
So far, we've really talked mostly about work that pertain to your background in science and also your hobbies or things that you have a passion for. But I was thinking and wondering if you also did some works that were more biographical, so that pertain more on who you are, and if that was maybe something that you wanted to go into or find a way to merge both more research based and of the work that is a bit more emotional, I would say, or private, if you wanted to share that.
Yeah. So I did do a big piece that was all about my heritage and my experience of the holidays. My grandparents come from Austria, and so celebrating Christmas in Canada was very different from the way my friends celebrated Christmas. And so, since my grandparents passed, I made this big piece to reconnect with them, and put everything about their home and my experiences of Christmas into this, what is it, like 6 feet by 5 foot cardboard, what is it called? Advent calendar with a giant Krampus and bishop who are bringing candies and like the basket and the switch to beat the naughty children. And in that, I have, my grandmother's cookies that she made me, like a bit of their home. And that was a very sentimental piece for me. And I made another giant, like 3 meter by 2.5 meter piece of my current living room, because it brings me so much peace. The lights and the configuration of things. And I guess I see a lot of beauty in a random pile of stuff, like just my things in a pile. It's like a little still life, and those are little moments of things that I've chosen or things that have been gifted to me that are all, static but alive in this way. It's like an emergent property, or like the spirit of the home kind of thing. I've done self-portraits as well. My self-portraits are more exaggerated because it's exploring an aspect of my personality. Like, I will show you this quick little doodle I made on a really odd day.
So, for some context, Julie is showing me some of her works on her Instagram. And so, if you wanted to look back at those pieces, feel free to go and look up Julie's Instagram page. She has wonderful works there, and I will be linking it as well. But we're just referring to those pieces that she's mentioning as we look at the art pieces themselves.
This self-portrait is a ridiculous, like, caricature of myself making a weird face in blue and wearing glasses. Not at all flattering. And then I have another one of a really weird angle in with a plant, and I'm looking kind of diva-ish. And this is a picture of my feet and my legs and
I love
on
that
the
one.
pavement in the autumn, and the writing over top in Sharpie is of a song that I wrote.
Oh.
Yeah, it's called like Cloud Nine. And let me see. There's a couple of portraits of my partner with a new, what was it, like a marker that you can paint with?
Oh, yeah,
Paint markers. And there's another portrait of myself like in the water. I think I took black paint and put it in my bathtub. So
my gosh.
yeah, I cleaned my bathtub very well after that. But I was curious as to what it would look like.
And would you ever, because right now your works that you've been working on recently are less like figurative, except for the little spiders. That's like in itself. But do you find like you potentially want to blend like more figurative, or you would want to keep it more abstract? Because I feel like the abstractness lends itself to the subject matter a lot, but it could be really cool if you're thinking about the lives of those divers or things. It could be cool to maybe have an abstracted view of the person, or I don't know.
I will take that and do something with that. Yeah, no, I think I have so many thoughts and so many ideas that I think right now I've just been exploring this just to like build a body of work kind of thing, which I haven't built a body of work based on one idea before.
Yeah.
So that's something that art school brought to me. But it is something that I will explore, like, because it all depends on who I'm painting and why.
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing myself, a lot of times it's because it's an easy subject.
Yeah.
I know I can paint myself. I know I'm not going to object.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not going to misrepresent myself. But I do love doing portraits. Like this one is of a time when I came home from being away and found that someone in my home did not take care of the potatoes. And so I had to clean up.
No.
So I decided to make it fancy. I taped my nose shut, put on beautiful lipstick, and cleaned and commemorated it with a painting. But
yeah, again, that makes me think of like how you document like moments through like the self-portraits that you have. And that's like really interesting.
You're giving me information about myself, and I appreciate it. This is fascinating. I've never had, having such a detailed and in-depth conversation with you about my work and what I've presented in school versus what I'm showing you now, it's been very illuminating for me.
But no, I think like the reason, and now everyone will hear it, but I think like the reason I asked you is just because in class I like what you were saying, but I didn't know you like very personally. So that also allows like a bit of, we can get to know each other, but also help each other in a way that's not like necessarily, you're my friend, so I feel bad about saying that. Like I don't, like, you're my friend also, but like there's not that little, I don't want to go there or things.
Yeah. No, it's been really, I guess I do document my life in that way. Yes. Cool. Thank you for teaching me about myself through this conversation.
No worries.
No, it's
but yeah, I've seen that there was a show at the CCA like a couple years ago. It was photography as documentation, and I wrote an essay on that. But it was a very well curated show, as it was a lot of photography. Like it was just photography, but it was like different artists that were actually like documenting things. And there was some where it was this artist that was just taking pictures of the same wave all the time at like different years and coming back to the same wave. And there was this one artist also that was taking photographs of what they had in their fridge. So it really made me think of like how like some mundane things can be translated into art.
I think the idea of the mundane is another construct put upon us to separate us from the joys of what we consider mundane. And that's something that I try to celebrate in my practice as well. It's like that little pile of stuff. This mug, someone carefully crafted this, who probably has a heart of in ceramics or something. And then, you know, to think about where the clay came from, where the glazes came from, like it can be mundane, I think, if we keep those societal lenses. But if we take all of these little objects and look at how they got to our possession, how they got here, and where they came from, we are immediately more connected.
We're just like bouncing with ideas. But no, I love like also the oil rig work that you were doing. I think I told you after, but it made me think a bit of the big wind turbines.
Oh, yes, yes.
And how like there are things that we just don't pay attention to, or like that are very big. Like when you were working a lot on the, or like on your work, it made me think a lot of people that have, is it called megalophobia? Or people that are scared of things that are big.
Oh.
So thinking about creatures in the ocean as well, a lot of like, I don't know if they still exist, but like ancient like krakens or things like that.
There are giant squids.
Yes, giant squids, or like even giant whales.
Yeah.
Some people are just scared of it because it's so massive.
Yes, that's a very legitimate fear.
But yeah, like seeing the oil rig, you drawing the oil rig made me think of that a little bit.
Oh, good. I mean, good in that it elicited an emotional, like a sensorial reaction.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the beauty of art, like having sensorial like reactions to it. I feel like that's, to me, that's the meaning of art. Like when you have a reaction to seeing something, or like hearing about things.
Like the aesthetic experience and the firstness of that.
Yeah, I think that's why maybe a lot of people love watching movies as well, because a lot of people that are not, I would say, not into art would watch movies for the plot line, but a lot of people that are artistic or like enjoy art would maybe focus a bit more on like the aesthetic or like shots that are particularly lit, or some music. Some people might focus more on the lyrics themselves, but some people might focus on the little thing, or like the beat. So it makes me really think of like how we experience things.
And I think something else that I got out of art school in the community and seeing so many different things and going to so many different art shows is being able to pick out and find something to relate to in every piece, whether or not the thing appeals to me as a whole or not. I think looking for those connections and looking for, I think that's a skill in itself, just not dismissing something outright, but looking for that thing. Maybe it's not the thing that the artist intended, but just anything that connects you. Because somebody put time into this, somebody made it, and now here it is.
Yeah, it like before art school, I would say I'm not a person that will go outright and be like, I don't like this. But I would like before I would think like, this is not my type. I really don't like that. But now I'm after like doing a whole undergrad and being also in other like artistic fields, and I tend to like focus more on the techniques than the like product itself. And I was wondering if you also have that, like leading up, being more interested in like techniques or materials than the project in itself.
I think it depends on the project.
Yeah.
If that's all that I'm given to connect to, then I will take it. But there have been times when there are pieces that I don't like, and I'm like, all right, let me try to understand it.
Yeah.
I will try to intellectualize my way through it to find a door or a crack, and I will understand it. I will go through the academic hoops or like the philosophical hoops to get there, and then I'm like, oh, I understand it, but I still don't like it. And then having conversations, it's like, it's okay not to like things. I'm like, okay, that's a thing that I have to remember too.
Without going too much into detail, one of the conversations I've had with Julie that I kind of cut out my question was about our feelings towards critiques in school. And more, how do we bring some conversations instead of just critiquing the work in a way that pleases what we like? So instead of saying, I just like this or I don't like this, we're thinking about how critiques have an important space in art school. And we didn't go too much into detail, but I feel like what Julie is saying soon is really interesting. And it really brings a conversation on critiques in school institutions. And it's really a topic that I feel like should be discussed a bit more. But that would be for another episode.
With crits, it's it depends on the group of people. It depends on the types of crits being offered, and like in this particular class, we're speaking more to the forms and figures.
Yeah.
Whereas in other classes that I've been in, we speak about the philosophy behind the artwork in front of it and less about the form and figure, which has been very, very interesting. And so and also on the topic of feedback, I think there's this notion of brutal honesty and gentleness, but I think we can separate honesty from the word brutal and just have a diplomatic conversation to say, well, this works, and it's important to depersonalize it and talk about the work itself. So I like people to be pragmatic and direct and share their aesthetic experiences as well.
I understand that. I feel like that too.
But questions or suggestions without examples, I find it doesn't give me anywhere to go.
Yeah.
And because I have a harder time processing audio information, I don't always understand what people are saying the first, second, or third times they say it. If it was written down or if I'm given examples, then it's easier for me to engage with. But more or less, most of my crits have been helpful. And I'm a very direct person. So
it's good. Sometimes it's not necessarily personal. It's just the way that we understand things. It's a bit better than to go around and beat around the bush.
Yeah.
One thing I'm really interested is, do you have like any inspiration, whether it's artists or even like researchers or like articles?
Well, Ellen Gallagher is someone that I researched in the summer, and she's the reason that I got into my big black paintings or drawings. She's fascinating. Look her up. I will actually. I can send you my. I know Marie did a little presentation on her, but I did one as well in the summer, and her knowledge is immense. She combines marine history, like
Ooh.
and marine biology with Afrocentrism
Yeah.
and Afrofuturism and environmental things. Like she just braids everything together in ways that I want to do. Like such an inspiration to me. And her style spans multiple like things. Oh. Her style is not limited to just one way of working. She'll work with bright colors. She'll work with collage. She is so multimedia.
Yeah.
And if I could be anything like her. And this year I was researching Elsie Bosselman,
Okay.
and she was part of the let me see, the American Tropical Research Center as an artist.
Okay.
And so when William Beebe was going down in the very first kind of sub to the deep ocean, she was on the phone with him, drawing what he was seeing, and he was taking sketches. And this was in the time before like underwater cameras were really there, technologically speaking. So all of this information was gathered and relayed through sight and through samples. And the science and engineering team had an artist on board. And it wasn't just a very mechanical view of it. She illustrated things with heart, like with mystery, with flowy lines. Like you can't help but be entranced by her drawings and paintings. And this woman went underwater and painted next to a coral reef, like underwater with her palette of oil paints.
How does that even work?
I will send you the papers. It's amazing. She had on a copper helmet with a window, and there was a hose that led up to the surface. So she had a constant supply of air. And she just went down and put oil paints, because the oil wouldn't dissolve in the water, and would do about 30 minutes underwater and then finish it in her studio. And I mean, these people are like blending the arts and science and culture and magic and folklore in ways that I want to. I mean, less folklore with Elsie Bosselman, but the pictures and the stories, the scientific stories, were also communicated to the public and inspired things like writers who wrote, was it John Wyndham, The Kraken Wakes or something. So it wasn't just, it was like building legends. And that's fascinating. It's all interdisciplinary.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I find fascinating, like, when I met you and you were like, I have this background in science, I was a marine biologist and things like that. It's like, we know that it's interdisciplinary, but we don't necessarily know how it could be. And it's really interesting, like, seeing artists that actually do both together without necessarily focusing just on one of them. Or
Ooh, I also suggest Dr. Robin Wall Kimmer, or I don't remember if it's Robin Wall Kimmer or Kimmer Wall. Anyway, she is an Indigenous scientist, and her book Braiding Sweetgrass is
I've heard of it.
Yes, very much about blending Indigenous knowledge with Western views in science. And you know, when she would go into that field, people would say, what, this or that? And then she would say, you know, why not both? And her questions stemmed from the aesthetic experience, like, why do, this chapter, why do asters and goldenrod grow together and they're so beautiful? And then she was able, like, from that inspiration, to do investigation scientifically and start to answer in a holistic way.
Yeah, I think it all starts from, like, asking yourself some questions and going from, like, what interests you in one thing and then how it can be translated into another.
And I think being open to the experiences, because again, like, getting up and working every day and being exhausted and going to bed, it's so easy to miss things by just trying to keep up with what's demanded of us in our culture today. But stopping and smelling the roses, like, quite literally, I think is something that can save people's lives in slowing down.
Yeah, and one thing I like, because you've worked with the children and like younger do you feel like in that way that also helped? Do you feel like in that way that helped you understand the perspective of how like some people can understand something, or like keep an open perspective on using one topic and seeing how that like people's point of view change on that?
I think when it comes to gauging people's connections to something, what I've done as a science teacher is start with a topic, and like the I. What do you
Yeah.
know? And just see, and with an I, there are things that might feel obvious to everyone, but that beginning point gives everyone a chance
Yeah.
to say, yeah, eyebrows, eyelashes. And I think having a starting point where everyone has an ability to access what you're talking about is important, because once you build that first bridge to say, yes, you're included, yes, what you know already is important and valuable, will bring people in instead of excluding people to say, oh, you don't know this, so that makes you on a different plane. But no, it's about welcoming people into a piece of information and starting to build connections, personal connections, like, oh, eyebrow. Why is someone maybe interested in eyebrow? Maybe it's from a fashion perspective. Maybe it's because they love their grandparents' eyebrows because they're fluffy and beautiful. And then, then we can build a conversation on what you already know and make that human connection first. Because I think it's important to say, like, I care about what you know. I care about you before you can even access the rest of the conversation. And so that's how I try and welcome people in of different life experiences and different perspectives. And in my classroom settings, and as I go through the world, what I would tell my students when I was teaching is, this is your community. Like, ask each other for help, share your knowledge. When you get older, like, maybe some of you, this will be your friend in like 20 years. So, you use each other, be there for each other, lift each other up. And that was the basis of my teaching practice, is building community. And that's what I'm trying to bring with me into my art practice, is, trying to get to know everyone and trying to see what we both understand about something and build a connection based on that. And for us, it's talking about art and off mic, like folklore, as well as the science and so on. And now we have built not just an interest in art, but a community connection.
Exactly. And I was wondering, do you have any maybe projects you're working on or things you want to shout out?
I think to close up, my biggest message would be, build community, go to each other's shows, stay curious. My partner just opened up a restaurant. It's a Comptoir ep.3 at 3406 Ontario Street in Hochelaga. And you can just get delicious fresh pasta. And it's a to-go place. And it's wonderful. And the four things that I think of on my practice are compassion, curiosity, knowledge, and another one I forgot. It's okay.
And is there like any upcoming shows you've applied that we can maybe look forward to, or where can we find your work?
I'm not in any shows at the moment, but you can find me on Instagram at Julie Story Paint, one word.
I will link it in the description as well.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, and I hope you got something out of it.
Very much so.
Perfect. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm excited to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Is there like maybe a big project that you're thinking of working on during the summer?
We didn't even talk about collaborations. That's something I would love to do. So if anyone's interested in collaborating, get in touch with me. But I want to explore polymetallic nodules, which are at the bottom of the deep ocean, and try and figure out how I can make those aesthetically interesting, because people are about to start mining them for things like computer parts
Okay.
and rare earth elements. And we don't know how they impact the bottom of the ocean yet. And they're looking at how they make dark oxygen and maybe feed these ecosystems. So I'm exploring that and more water column stuff. And who knows what else the summer will bring. Probably
well,
some
thank you
music.
so much, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I
my
appreciate
pleasure.
I appreciate your curiosity and community building.
Thank you. So, thank you so much for listening to me and Julie having a great conversation. It was such a blast to get to know her a little bit more. And I hope you guys check out her Instagram and her future works. And again, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. I hope that you stay to discover what's beyond art. As a reminder, the podcast is available on YouTube and most streaming platforms, and you can always reach me on Instagram at beyondart_pod. Thank you so much for sticking by, and I hope to see you guys next month on Beyond Art.